And hello everyone, my name is Craig, and this is a short little guide to using some custom reports I've put you together for doing device mining. And there are basically four reports here which I've linked to in the comments, and there's one here for desktop, one here for mobile, one here for tablet, and one here for iPhone models. Just as a general thing, where I would normally start in all of this is by actually looking at the overview report, right? And I'm currently looking at the Google Merchandise Store. So I'm not really using any of my clients' data. I'm not familiar with it, but this is where I basically Start looking at desktop conversion rates, transactions, revenue per user, things like bounce rate differences potentially, the share of revenue, the share of transactions, the share of users on here is also very interesting. But this is your kind of broad brush high level here. But look at the mobile conversion. That's about 1/6 of the desktop conversion, which seems fairly lousy to me. As a general rule, I'm normally expecting it sort of to be sort of within 1.5 and 2.5 times desktop conversion to be 1.5 to 2.5 times the size of mobile. It varies on every site. It's just a horrible approximation. But where we see variances where it's like 6 to 1, then it either means that the desktop experience is phenomenally good here, or the mobile experience is particularly poor, or there's something intrinsic about the way the mobile audience has been targeted, its characteristics that mean that that conversion rate is low. It's just a general clue. But when I then start digging into things is using these three reports, and this stuff is all automated now, but it's easier to kind of show you through the thinking rather than just throwing a load of Excel data at you. And this means that you can also reproduce all the things I'm doing here in this video by yourselves. So if we start with the desktop report, this device experience report, we'll see that I've split by operating system, right? That's one of the biggest determinants of the user experience here on desktop, right? And if we just have a quick sort of scan across here, we can see one kind of quite frightening thing already. Why are Windows desktops converting less than a quarter of the rate of Mac desktops? Is it because intrinsically these people have more money or have greater propensity to purchase? Or is it something intrinsic to the device itself? Is there a problem with the Macintosh device experience, right? We've got a small amount of Chrome OS and Linux users on here. Normally, I would not see 10% Chrome OS users on a site like this. This is just because it's Google's demo site. So normally it's Windows and Mac here, right? You might have a tiny bit of all this other stuff, but really you're talking about very, very small data samples. So it's almost a Windows and Mac show here. But let's drill down here into Windows using this custom report, and we get these stats now split by browser, right? So I can see that basically the Google Store works brilliantly in Windows on Chrome. Well, not brilliantly, but way better on Chrome than Edge. So the driver of the average that I'm seeing in the Windows browser conversion rate is mainly being driven by poor conversion here, but also especially poor conversion here. So there's some kind of problem with Edge and Firefox here. Okay, these aren't big transactions. I'm just using this as an illustration. So there's a lot of fuzziness in this data, and you need to, when you start to get down to small numbers here in your calculations, you need to put these into a calculator to see what your confidence range is, right? Because this value here is not a precise value when you have small transactional values. It's actually got quite a lot of fuzziness in it, right? So you just have to bear that in mind. There's not a huge amount of transactional data on this site. Most of the client sites I'm working with would have a lot more than this for a 6-month period. But again, it's just for illustration. So I've dug into Windows desktop, and I found a couple of things that I flagged already. Let me go back to the high level here. So now I can drill into Macintosh and see what the split of browsers is there. And whilst I wait for GA to load, now I can see it's mainly a Chrome show, right? But here's the interesting thing. This site works brilliantly on Chrome, terribly on Safari, right? And that's 20% of the users, but that's also a tenth, getting up for a ninth or a tenth of the conversion rate, right? So you can already see some variances and differences here. They don't tell you what the problem is. They're just telling you there's something wrong and you need to investigate it. So uh, basically, um, basically, go back to this level, you'll probably find that it's mainly a Windows and Macintosh show here for desktop. So the one other thing that I'll do here on the desktop report is that if I edit it here and I swap browser with screen resolution, right, and then save this report, don't worry, I'll change it back before I'm finished. Then what we do is we get our Windows and Mac operating system breakdown for desktop. But if I now drill into Windows, it's going to give me all the Windows resolutions. And that then allows me to work out, have we got a lot of laptops here? Do we have big screens? Is it a mixture of big screens and small screens? So we can already see we've got 30% that have a 1080 monitor, but 21%, a lot of laptops have 1366 by 768. In fact, if we include kind of these three resolutions, you can see the 7,800 kind of pixel mark is a significant proportion of the audience, right? And there are obvious differences to be mined in the screen resolution data. You can't just go by these figures though, because look, there's 971 rows here, and what you really need to do is take this data and process it into buckets of resolution height, right? Because the height is one of the biggest things that determines how the viewport functions within a desktop browser. So it's important that you bucket them by height. You can do width as well, but height is much more useful for me. So that's us pretty much covered desktop. Let me just go back and swap that report back so I don't confuse someone when you use it again. But you can make a copy and edit it to your heart's content and extend it or do whatever you like with it. If I then say, okay, I'm kind of finished looking at the desktop stuff here, let's go and look at the mobile side of things. And here I can see it's in pretty much an even Android and iOS split. There's a few other things, but no transactions here whatsoever, and I can see that, Android and iOS. Normally, iOS on almost all of the sites that I have analyzed, iOS converts higher, right? And big part of that is socio-demographic behind the phone, right? The people who own it have more money, right? And this effect can impact the conversion. It's not necessarily just the device, it's also the person behind the device. And that distortion can vary hugely in different markets. So always just be aware of that. But immediately here, I can see that there's some kind of difference between Android and iOS. Maybe it's just a lower conversion rate, or maybe there's some sort of bug in the Android experience. I've also put a drill down on mobile here. If you want to look at models, then if you drill down one level, this will tell you pretty much what your main models are that you're playing with. In terms of which one to actually test, it doesn't really matter very much. It's the size that matters. So a smaller phone like a Samsung S8 or a Huawei P20, right, are pretty good proxies. There are some people who have much bigger Android phones, but there's a lot of people in that kind of mid-market area, right? So this is why I always recommend testing with an S8 or an S9, right? Because all these other phones will perform very similarly, in fact, almost identical in terms of the browser handling. The only thing that's going to differ is the viewport size. So you try and test the smaller phone, not the biggest one available from Samsung. Always test the smaller one. Um, Anything else worth drilling into here? If I go into iOS here, it's only going to give me the brand name of Apple, so there's no point there. How do I work out what are the individual Apple models are on here? What I can then do is show you this iPhone models report, right, which will also be linked to in the comments. And if you look down the list here, you'll have a whole bunch of resolutions, right? And this one isn't a real resolution, neither is this one. So there's actually a whole bunch of data here that's kind of rubbish. You need to do a bit of data cleaning. But the vast majority of these top entries that have decent sort of traffic volumes in them will also correspond to these iOS resolutions. And if you want to know all the iOS resolutions of different devices, there's iosresolution.com. And I can then basically go and look up an iPhone 12 Pro is NGA 390 by 844, right? So I can then work out, there we go, 390 by 844. We've got 9% iPhone 12 Pro audience, right? And the way those resolutions break down is that some of them are grouped, right? So there are a lot that are the same, like the iPhone 6S, the 7, and the 8 are all the same resolution reporting. So I've put together a Medium article here, again in the links, and this gives you the grouping for the phones, right, and tells you what physical size it is for the GA resolution that's being poked back at you. And this physical size is really important, right? If I go back here to the data and the Google merchandise site, yes, I can see I've got some big phones, but I also have a lot of phones that are smaller, right? And this is a mass market phone, right? It's a fairly big chunk of the audience. So I kind of need to be testing probably a large iPhone here, but definitely a small one. So a 6S, a 7, an 8, or an SE 2020. And last but not least, I have a report for you here, which is the tablet drill down. And you won't find a great deal of data in here, and I'll explain why that is in a minute. But you'll see a split here between iOS and Android, and if you drill down into that, similar deal to doing things on mobile. But the one big problem here is that under this tablet device category, there's actually a lot of tablet data missing, right? And that's because it's actually under desktop, right? So if I go back to the desktop experience report and I drill down into Macintosh, right? And I see here, well, I just want to change this for resolution right now. So I'll go in and hack this report and swap those two around. And so I'm now going to drill into Mac desktops on the Google Merchandise Store and see what resolutions they have, right? But what's this 810 by 1080, right? And the problem here is that what we end up with inside this data is a whole bunch of tablet data. And I'm just going to pull up the regex that will actually isolate this for you. And if I pop this little piece of regex in here, include screen resolution containing blah, basically, then this will isolate, whoops, regex, do. Then what I can see here is there's a whole bunch of iPads here in the desktop traffic that's been mixed in there, right? Because these resolutions do not exist on any Macintosh desktop computers whatsoever, right? This is something that I need to talk to Google about and see if they can fix. But just a quick recap then, I have a desktop report, I've got you a mobile report, I've got you an iPhone models report, and I've got you a drill down for tablet. You can map all the iPhone and iPad model resolutions here, and this gives you a summary by physical size. I hope that was a useful little rundown, and I hope that you have a play with the data and find useful and fruitful things in your explorations. Good day.